the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Lighting Guy podcast. The Lighting Guy is produced in partnership with AV Nation. It's a show about light, lighting design, and how to control it all. I'm your host, JP Bedell. All right, we took the summer off. We haven't podcasted in a couple of months, but we come back from Labor Day weekend, and it's time to have some big news. So the show's changing. We've called it the Lighting Guy. This is the last edition that we're ever going to call the Lighting Guy because we're adding a co-host. Some of you are going to remember Megan Mazzocco. She was a guest on the show a few months ago, and we've had probably the best, liveliest conversation we ever had on the show when Megan was our guest. She's super smart. She writes about this stuff. She's plugged into the industry, and she knows what kind of questions to ask, and I'm thrilled that she decided to come aboard. So, Megan, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and as your co-pilot or co-host for the LightCast. Oh, was that too soon?
No. So we're changing the name of the show because it's not the Lighting Guy anymore. We decided to change the show. The title is now the LightCast, and the thought process behind that was that we want to get more into how lighting really works as a design element, how products tie into design, and how control products tie into how a space ultimately looks, feels, and operates. That was something that I think we both felt really strongly about. We're also going to change the format a little bit. So instead of just me jumping in and then interviewing someone, we want to make it a little bit more of a discussion, and we want to involve you guys. So, Megan, how are we going to format this going forward?
Well, I think in the beginning we're going to just give a quick update of what's been happening recently in terms of industry news. And that segment we're going to coin Lighting Vitals. And it will be an ongoing conversation on Twitter with the hashtag #TheLightCast. And I think it will be interesting to preview the topics and then continue on with how they're developing in the news that month.
Yeah, so you guys, previously the format was that we would jump in, do an interview, jump out, and we want to get this in. We want to keep this conversation moving online. We've noticed most of the conversation seems to center around Twitter. So you see Megan's handle up there, Megatorial. I'm James Bedell. So the idea here is that we're going to continue the conversation around lighting news week to week. So we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about the news that we discussed in the previous episode. We'll have an interview segment, and then we're going to jump into what we're calling the sort of summation. We're going to do a summation and sort of lead with what we're going to talk about for the next month. So there's always, with the advent of LED, the advent of controls rapidly sort of changing in the market, we think that there's enough news month to month to talk about what's going on. And so we want to keep that conversation going between episodes and answer questions and get show ideas from you guys. Anything you're thinking about, hashtag the LightCast, and Megan and I will be on top of that, making sure that we're keeping that conversation going. So, without further ado, the next thing that we're thinking about for September, the Lighting Vitals for September. Megan, what are we thinking about for next month?
We are definitely focused on the TM3015 and the new color rendering metric that IES has recently approved as a method to consolidate and synthesize numerous research efforts that have been ongoing for several years. So my question is, JP, is this the end of CRI, and what are all those methods and research that they are synthesizing? Is it right on?
So the story behind TM30-15, as I understand it, and we should note that there's a webinar coming from the IES. To back up, TM30-15 is a standard that's been developed in partnership with the IES, the Illuminating Engineering Society, and the Department of Energy. So, and it was specifically done to deal with issues around color rendition and color quality coming from LED. They are hosting a webinar on September 15th. We'll have a link to the registration in the show notes so that you can, it's a free webinar and you don't have to have an IES membership. You can just jump in and watch. It's important. If you care about lighting, if you care about lighting design, and you care about using LED, which I think is pretty much everybody in this audience, you're going to care about this standard. Essentially, what they've done is, and we all know the old story about CRI, right? The 8 colors, sort of pastels, off the common primary colors that were used to, as this was a scale that was invented in 1954. It was refined again, I believe, in 1962. I might be wrong about the refined date, but point is that it's a very old scale. It's a very old metric, and it was developed around incandescent and fluorescent technology, not around solid state. So previous to TM3015, several different industry groups tried to create different color quality scales. The first was the CQS, color quality scale, which extended the range of colors that were being measured from 8 to 15, including a deep red. The idea here was that you were going to have a color scale that was more true to life. And that got some traction, but it also had its detractors, and so it didn't become an industry-wide standard. Then there was the Class A effort, which was another way of sort of measuring color quality. Also didn't become an industry standard, but the work that and research that went into the color quality scale and into the Class A standard are what gave us TM3015. The same folks and the same people that were interested in this kind of science pulled this together. So here are some of the key things that I know about the standard at this point, and we're going to learn more at the webinar. First thing, it uses a palette of 99 colors to do the ultimate measure of what the color fidelity and color gamut of a given light source. So when you had 8 at CRI, 15 with CQS, we're going to a full 99 colors to do the rendition measurement for TM3015, which is a huge jump. That's going to include saturated colors as well as pastels, as well as mixed colors. It's going to be a much fuller palette from which to measure. The other thing to understand is that it is a 2-part score instead of a 1-part score. So CRI, for anybody that is not necessarily familiar, is a theoretical scale from 0 to 100. Most sources these days, or most reputable sources, go from 80 plus CRI to 90 plus CRI, or better sources are 90 plus. This is going to have 2 scores like that, both measured from 0 to 100. One is for fidelity, and the other is for gamut. And the difference there is fidelity is the sort of trueness of color, which is to say if the light source hits a given object and the object is red, you can't mistake it for gray or blue or green. It's going to look red to you. Gamut is the saturation of that given color. So if it's meant to be a pure red object and this light casts it back as a pure red object, it's 100% gamut. If it looks like it's muddy or if it pulls toward one way or the other, or you're going to get a different score. That combined score is going to give specifiers, ideally, a better idea of how the light source is going to perform as a design element. So that's what they're shooting for. Now, what we don't know is how they're going to actually integrate this into the industry. Like, how are the scores, what are the testing methods? Is independent testing going to be okay? How is testing verified? All of those things are yet to be determined.
So it won't just all of a sudden be on your LightFax label.
It's not going to be on the LightFax label right away, and I have no idea what kind of, we won't know really. I know that there is some industry support in terms of factories and folks from the different manufacturers getting on board for this, but I don't know what the rollout's going to be in terms of seeing CRI scores get changed to TM3015 scores, and whether or not you're going to see RF and RG tags for different scores. We don't know until it starts to roll out, really.
Interesting. This will be something to follow for quite a while. It sounds like it's going to be developing over the next I don't know, year?
Who knows? I mean, if it's easy enough to test, it could be something that manufacturers start dropping into cut sheets fairly quickly. But we don't know that. What I would say is we're talking about September 15th for the industry-wide webinar. I'm sure there will be follow-up steps from there, the same way you register IES files. All of the IES files that are now on board with a CRI score are going to have to get updated. So there's a lot of work that's going to have to go into updating those databases. Mm-hmm. Who knows, right? It was one of the mysteries in terms of how fast these things turn over. But what it does have going for it is because the Department of Energy is behind it, you have all kinds of different potential legal implications. Right. For instance, in California, they require you can't just have Energy Star in California. If you want a rebate, you also have to have a 90 CRI source if you're going into a residential environment.
Oh, okay.
So that's only in California, but the point is that if DOE is signed on for this, they could require minimum scores for RF and RG based on this new criteria. We don't know that, but it could be. And if that's the case, it behooves the manufacturers to move in this direction. And it could have huge implications for the industry because CRI has been long bashed as a bad metric for LED. It's very easy to tweak the wavelength of your given LED to get a 90 plus CRI score that may have absolutely nothing to do with how a fixture is actually going to look in the real world. So right. This is it could be a big jump.
And what comes to mind to me immediately is that it will affect a lot of retail lighting design. I mean, this is where I see lighting designers making their clients the happiest. And beyond that, I mean, it could have a lot of implications for lighting museums, which I know have switched over in a high percentage and a high proportion to LED lighting. So, I mean, the potential for this new metric to make a lot of people happy and have accurate color rendering it sounds great. It sounds like a great tool and a great piece of information that's been missing from the resources of a lighting designer, of a lighting professional.
I think there's going to be growing pains on the manufacturing side for a little while because the push and pull when you're developing product was, when you're choosing your LED chip or you're choosing a module and putting it in your fixture, you've got to make the subjective by eye decision, does this look good? Is it casting great light? But what we found with LED is that a great looking light may come in with an 80 CRI score, have nothing to do with the actual way it renders color, but that's just the way it's scored on such a mediocre scale. So the question for you need to be able to say your 90 plus CRI. It could be irrelevant to how the source actually looks in the real world, but you needed to be able to say that. So now you have to kind of go back and look at how the chips are being developed and look at what chips you're using in your product and say, well, does it look great in real life? And you're going to start to see, I think, iterations of chips where, this is my hope more than anything else maybe, but efficiency was always the push, right? More lumens per watt, more lumens per watt, more lumens per watt. Now maybe we're going to see more on the color side, which is really, really fantastic news because we're capable of it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the main delights of lighting and seeing stuff is colors.
Right. You don't just show up to see some bright stuff, right? That's not the goal. So that's TM3015. A lot more to talk about. Megan and I will be on Twitter. We're going to be punching up links to TM3015, talking about it online and on out in that space. If you have questions about it, if you're thinking about it, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either one of us. Punch it up with the hashtag LightCast. After the webinar goes live and we have a chance to digest it, Megan and I are going to do a show. We'll have a guest. We're going to talk about guest to be determined, but we're going to have a guest, someone that was involved in the development of the standard, to talk us through it and give us a little more explanation about what it is and how it's going to work. And we want to keep the conversation going before and after, because this is going to be an industry changer. So we're excited. Mm-hmm. So for the last time as the lighting guy, I am one of your hosts now, JP Bedell. Now as the co-host of the LightCast, that's you.
Yes, and I'm your co-host, Megan Mazzocco. I am curious and excited to maybe let the cat out of the bag about, we were talking about possibly having another segment to the show, something about adventures in lighting, or real life lighting situations. And maybe even being able to contribute to that while I'm traveling in the next 6 weeks or so. And I did have another question about the TM 3015, if you wouldn't mind going back to that.
Sure.
Is this something that's, is this a metric that will be used standard across the entire LED industry, no matter what country you're in?
Well, that's a good question. No one is required to use CRI at this point, right? It's a required metric to get on the Lighting Facts label, but it's more considered an industry standard and something that specifiers look for when they're specifying LED. The lighting world is so international now that most standards tend to cross over borders, right? I mean, we measure in foot candles, they measure in lux, but really, by and large, we tend to think about lumen output, they tend to think about center beam candle power in Europe. We are all using the same numbers, we're just kind of coming at them a little bit differently. CRI has been that scale that sort of sits there. It's universal because it was developed sort of globally. I think this is right now an American standard. If it proves to actually measure color quality better, I would be surprised if the Europeans didn't adopt it. But I'll be honest with you, I think that we in the States are more tied to hard metrics about light than the European designers are. I think European designers are much more about looking at fixtures, looking at luminaires, seeing what they do in a space, and then deciding if they want to use them. We're much more tied to what does the paperwork say. That's just the American style. It's just how we are. Now, what Megan was talking about in terms of our little lighting adventures, we're going to try to put out an episode once a month. That's the goal. This September is going to be a little different. By the time you guys hear this, it'll be post-Labor Day. But we're going to, and then we're going to do another one post the webinar. But generally, the goal is going to be to post one episode a month that catches up on the industry. But, a lot goes on in a month. I see a lot of stuff. Megan sees a lot of stuff. So the goal is going to be to interject short little, little tidbits, little snack size lighting pieces that are going to be short videos, probably solo pieces. Maybe we'll jump on together occasionally and just talk about things that we're seeing out in the world, whether they're products, whether they're installations, and just keep the conversation around lighting going. So, and if you see stuff, again, post a picture, post a video, throw it up with the hashtag the LightCast. We'll follow it. We'll make sure we share it with the audience because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got an interesting perspective on lighting in historical preservation and renovations today, where I visited a few of the Richard Driehaus properties and collections in Chicago, and he's quite the collector and quite picky about lighting. And he's known in the architecture and design world for giving a $200,000 architecture prize annually. And I kind of planted the seed because we did talk a lot about lighting, and I said, well, maybe you need to champion lighting and offer a prize for excellent quality lighting in historical preservation and renovation. So there were a lot of beautiful artifacts and very well lit with LEDs. For instance, a Tiffany skylight called Willow Glass that was lit with LEDs, and it gave the effect, the LEDs were programmed to give the effect that it was the Chicago sky. Light
That's awesome.
that changes organically, and that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. It was brilliant. So hopefully I did snap a photo of that, and maybe some of those images will be on Twitter soon.
Oh, that's the goal, right? That's awesome. Yeah, I had a similar experience walking through Fulton Street. I posted some pictures, but I'll repost them with the hashtag. The center oculus that was designed to cast daylight into the train station is just a stunning daylighting design. Absolutely amazing. It won a Lumen Award this year. It was just incredible, and photos are amazing of it because it keeps people thinking. But I mean, the way it can cast light down 3 stories and into different caverns of the train station, just absolutely perfect. And I hope we see more use of daylight in that way. I mean, that's lighting design. It's not electrical lighting design, but it is absolutely a way to use light to transform a space, and it's really, really awesome.
Yes, that's huge. It's very important, and I think it might have been one of the things that we first took note of on Twitter when we first ran into each other in the Twitter sphere. I think that was the topic. It was the Oculus.
I wouldn't be surprised because I'm always yapping about it. But hey, when something's cool, I talk about it. Well, all right. For my co-host, Megan Mazzocco, I am JP Bedell. Thank you guys for joining us, and thanks for supporting the original show. It's going to get better now that we're a tag team, and we can't wait to hear more from you. So when it gets out there, start tweeting it, hashtag it, like the LightCast. It's out there. It's real. Thanks very much.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.